Her voice cracked like a whip. "Line them up, now." The manager scrambled, barking orders. Staff came rushing in, maids in uniforms, bellboys with luggage still in hand, bartenders wiping glasses, the receptionist paling as he realized what was happening. The lobby transformed from polished calm into a circus of nervous whispers. She stood dead center, phone still in her hand, every eye locked on her. 8 years, she said, voice rising. 8 years of grinding, working 3 jobs, sleeping in cars, eating ramen noodles just to make payroll. And this, she jabbed a finger at the floor, this building, this lobby, this hotel, all of it came from my blood, my sacrifice, my dream. Silence. The receptionist opened his mouth. I didn't know you were... She cut him off. You didn't care. That's worse. You looked at me and saw someone you thought didn't belong. You thought I wasn't good enough to step foot in a space I built. The general manager tried to smooth it over. Miss Carter, maybe we can... Shut your mouth. Her tone left no room for argument. She turned to the trembling staff. You think this is just a job? A paycheck. But this is my legacy. And if you think you can disrespect me, if you think you can disrespect my people, then you don't deserve to be here another second. The receptionist tried again, voice cracking. It was a mistake. Her laugh was sharp, humorless. A mistake. You denied the owner of this hotel a room. You humiliated me in front of strangers. And you want to call that a mistake? She leaned in, her voice low, dangerous. It was a choice. And choices have consequences. She raised her phone again, pressing speed dial. A lawyer's number lit up. Effective immediately, every single one of you is terminated. Security is on the way. You'll be escorted out and banned from this property for life. Gasps shot through the crowd. Some began to protest. Others hung their heads, knowing it was over. The receptionist dropped his voice, desperate now. Please, I have a family, and I had a dream, she shot back. And people like you tried to kill it every step of the way. Tonight I'm reminding you and this city that I built this empire, and I'll burn it to the ground before I let anyone take it from me. The couple who had just checked in were frozen, still clutching their luggage. The husband whispered, "She owns the place?" His wife nodded slowly, eyes wide. The elevator dinged again. 2 massive security guards strode out, black suits tight across their shoulders, eyes locked on her for instruction. She didn't hesitate. "Start with him." She pointed straight at the receptionist. He stammered, stumbling back. "Wait, please, But the guards were already on him, each grabbing an arm and hauling him off the floor like a rag doll. His cries echoed as the doors slammed behind them. The rest of the staff shrank into the walls. She turned, slow, deliberate, letting her gaze sweep across every trembling face. If any of you ever think about disrespecting a guest in this building again, especially a guest who looks like me, remember this night. Remember how fast power can change hands. The clock behind the counter ticked. 7 minutes since she had walked in. The general manager swallowed hard. "Miss Carter, what do you want us to do?" Her reply was ice. "Pack your things. All of you. You're finished here." No one moved at first. Then, one by one, the staff shuffled away, defeated, broken. 8 minutes. That was all it took. She lowered her phone, exhaled, and finally allowed herself the smallest, coldest smile. Her empire was safe for now. The press conference was a battlefield, and she walked into it like she owned the map. Cameras flashed. Microphones leaned forward like hungry mouths. Reporters shouted questions simultaneously, a storm of noise. She let them scream themselves out, then stepped up to the podium with a calm that made the chaos feel sloppy and small. "Good evening," she said, voice even, measured. "I'm Vanessa Carter. I own this hotel." A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd, some faces registering shock, others annoyance. "Last night I made a decision that I stand behind. I fired staff who disrespected me and the guests here, not because I wanted headlines, but because dignity matters. If you work in my house, you will show respect. If you don't work here." A reporter tried to cut in. "Ms. Carter, critics say you humiliated workers who have families. Then let them tell that story to the courts if they like," she replied, not missing a beat. "We followed policy. There will be no charity running my business. If you want a job that looks like a church bake sale, go volunteer. If you want a business that runs on discipline and excellence, then step up." Her words landed like stones. Some cheered. Others hissed. Outside, protesters multiplied. The receptionists' group had muscle now, union organizers, a couple of local activists, a TV crew with a sympathetic anchor. They painted Vanessa as cold, a billionaire who'd thrown away loyal workers. They waved signs, chanted, blocked the valet lane. Taxi drivers slowed. Guests cancelled. Competitors ran ads. Comfort with respect many where dignity matters, with thinly veiled shots at her name. Her inbox filled with threats and support in equal measure. Investors barked the occasional ransom of panic. One called to demand a staged apology. Vanessa cut him off. "I'll not apologize for enforcing standards," she said. "If you withdraw, I'll buy out your shares and find investors who believe in strength, not spin." Her lawyer, eyes flat and tired, pushed a folder across her desk. "You have at least 3 wrongful termination claims being prepped. The Receptionist Council is talking class action. They're collecting statements." He tapped the papers. "You're going to court if you don't negotiate." Vanessa slid a pen across the paper without looking. "Let them file," she said. "We'll win. We have surveillance, written warnings, witness testimony. If the truth is their shield, fine. But if their claim is sympathy over evidence, sympathy dissolves in a courtroom." Her assistant, younger, frayed at the edges, dropped another bomb. "Vanessa, someone splashed red paint on the north entrance. PR says it's symbolic, but security says it's an act." They were caught on camera running away. Vanessa walked to the window and saw the smear, a harsh streak against marble. It was small, the paint, but the message was large. Someone wanted to paint her as a villain, literally. She felt the heat in her throat, but she didn't flare. Instead, she thought like a businesswoman, not a martyr. "Lock down the building," she ordered. "Hire temporary staff from vetted agencies. Call the cleaners. Press release. Acts of vandalism will not deter us. We will not be bullied." Her voice was steady. Her calm felt like a plan. The night pushed on. The press conference footage split into sound bites. "She stood her ground," said one anchor. "She's ruthless," said another. Social media chewed and spat. Her supporters marched to the hotel in small numbers with signs, "Respect her and boss who cares." Counter-protesters chanted for the fired staff. The city polarized around a lobby, as if the marble had teeth. Competitors didn't stop at words. One boutique hotel offered immediate employment to any of Vanessa's former staff and guaranteed benefits. Free room vouchers rained on social feeds. A rival restaurateur announced a pop-up feeding the fired workers, live streaming solidarity. It was swift and public. The market smelled opportunity. At dinner, she ignored the invitations to late-night TV. She let her team handle the talk shows. She sat with 3 people who mattered, her lawyer, her head of operations, and a woman she'd once helped on the startup grind, a friend who now advised her on community relations. "We can't fight every front," the operations head said, tired. "Guests are cancelling. Revenue will dip. We risk penalties from city permits if protests block access." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "Then create access. Offer shuttle service. Partner with local businesses for parking. Make it easy for guests who still want us." Her friend reached across the table and took Vanessa's hand. "You shouldn't be this alone in this," she said quietly. "You struck a nerve, V. But nerves are honest. They show where people hurt. Use it. Offer a community dialogue. Host a forum. Acknowledge pain, not guilt. That can change the story." Vanessa considered it. She'd never been one for performative gestures, but she could see leverage. A public forum would put her voice back in the room, controlled, formal. It might cut the headlines or at least sharpen them into something she could manage. The lawyer set his mug down. "And the legal angle. We should prepare a settlement framework for the easiest cases. It's not negotiation, it's risk management." She nodded once. "Set up the forum, prepare the settlement options, tighten security, and start vetting new hires. But no apologies, not for demanding respect." Outside, the city roiled, but inside the crystal of her office, plans scrolled across screens. Calls were scheduled, a town hall drafted, PR lines rehearsed. Tactics, not tantrums. Strategy, not surrender. That night, she lay awake thinking about the receptionist's face when they hauled him out. She felt his fear like a sting, but she also felt the hard core of why she'd done it. Respect was not a veneer. It was a contract. She'd enforced it, and the city had reacted like she'd broken a sacred law. She wasn't naive. She knew the next days could bring legal bills, boycotts, physical threats. She also knew how to fight. Money, influence, relentless work, and the iron will that had built the hotel in the first place. The next morning would bring lawyers at dawn, TV vans on the curb, and perhaps the beginning of something larger than a single lobby. She closed her eyes for a breath. The war wasn't won. It had just become public. By the next morning, the hotel entrance looked like a battleground. Protesters formed a wall of bodies across the front steps. Some carried signs, "Justice for workers, boycott Carter hotels, respect isn't ruthless." Others carried megaphones, their chants cutting through the morning air. Cameras lined the sidewalks. Journalists reported live as guests tried and failed to make their way through the chaos. Inside, Vanessa watched from the lobby window, arms crossed tight. The red paint from the night before had been scrubbed off, but the stain lingered in her mind. Her brand was slipping into enemy hands. Her assistant approached, pale and frantic. "They've tripled in number since dawn. Police are here, but they're hesitant to break it up. Media's everywhere. If officers start shoving people, it'll look worse for you." Vanessa turned, calm but sharp. "Good, let them chant. Let them scream. They can't erase my name from these walls." But she wasn't as steady as she sounded. Her phone buzzed again. Investors, sponsors, and even her own staff blowing up her inbox. Every minute, another booking cancelled. Every minute, another rival gained ground. Then her assistant spoke again, softer this time. "Vanessa, there's someone here to see you. A community leader." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Who?" The assistant hesitated. "Reverend Daniels, the protest organizer." Vanessa's first instinct was to laugh. "The man leading chants outside my building wants a meeting now," but something in her assistant's tone made her pause. "Fine," she said. "Bring him in." Minutes later, Reverend Daniels walked into the boardroom. He was tall, steady, dressed in a plain suit, his expression unreadable. He didn't look rattled. He looked like a man who already knew the power of his presence. He sat across from her without waiting to be invited. "Miss Carter," he said, "you're a remarkable woman. Built an empire. Overcame odds stacked against you. But right now you're bleeding your own community dry." Her jaw tightened. "I demanded respect." "That's not bleeding, it's leadership." He leaned forward. "Leadership is listening. And right now, hundreds of people outside feel like you're deaf to their pain. The man you dragged out last night? He's got cameras painting him as David to your Goliath. And if you don't address it, your empire will collapse under the weight of its own silence." Vanessa's laugh was bitter. "Silence? I've done nothing but speak. I gave a press conference. I made my stance clear. Press conferences don't heal wounds," Daniels said. "They inflame them. You stand at podiums, bark orders, and the crowd sees a tyrant. But if you sit down in front of them, if you open the door, let people air their pain, let them feel like they've been heard, then maybe you remind them you're human." She leaned back, folding her arms. "So you want me to apologize?" He shook his head. "No, I want you to engage. Apologies are cheap. Dialogue is power. Hold a public forum. Invite the workers. Invite the press. Invite the community. Let them face you. Don't hide behind lawyers or security." Her lawyer, who had been sitting in the corner quietly, finally spoke. "Vanessa, this is dangerous. They'll tear you apart. One wrong word and you're finished." Daniels turned his gaze on the lawyer. "Or one right word and she becomes untouchable. Think about it. Who's ever seen a black woman in her position owning this much, standing toe-to-toe with critics and not folding? That's bigger than a hotel. That's history." The room went still. Vanessa felt the weight of it pressing against her chest. Her lawyer shook his head. "It's a trap. They'll scream. They'll cry. They'll weaponize her strength against her." Daniels didn't blink. "And if she doesn't face them, they'll weaponize her silence." Vanessa tapped her nails against the table, staring at the Reverend. She hated the idea of giving her enemies a platform, but she also hated losing control of her own narrative. Finally, she spoke. "Fine, one forum. On my terms. Inside my hotel, but they'll face me directly, not from the safety of a sidewalk." Daniels nodded. "That's all I needed to hear." He stood, buttoned his jacket, and left as quietly as he'd come. Her lawyer turned on her immediately. "This is insane. You're handing them the knife." "No," Vanessa said, eyes blazing. "I'm handing them the stage. And when the lights hit, I'll make sure the only name worth remembering is mine." She stood, already dialing her assistant. "Set it up. Tomorrow night, full media access. If the city wants a spectacle, I'll give them one." Outside, the chants grew louder, echoing against the glass. Vanessa listened, not with fear, but with calculation. Tomorrow they would all scream at her. Tomorrow they would try to break her. And tomorrow she would show them she wasn't breakable. The ballroom buzzed like a hive. Reporters filled the back rows, their cameras already rolling. The fired workers sat near the front, some glaring, some nervous, some rehearsing speeches they'd waited years to give. Protesters lined the walls, holding signs, their chants replaced by whispers, now that the stage was set. At the center, under a spotlight, a single chair and microphone waited. Vanessa Carter walked in without security, without a podium, without armor. Just her heels clicking, eyes steady, shoulders squared. The murmurs rippled as she sat down. She didn't smile. She didn't soften. She leaned forward into the mic. "You wanted me here." "I'm here. Speak." The first man to rise was the receptionist, the same one who'd denied her a room. His voice trembled at first, then hardened. "I've worked in hospitality for 10 years. I've taken abuse from drunk guests, racist guests, people who treated me like dirt. And last week, for the first time, I saw that same abuse come from the person who signed my checks. You humiliated me in front of the world. You didn't just fire me, you destroyed my reputation." The crowd erupted in applause. The camera zoomed in on Vanessa's face. She didn't flinch. She waited for silence, then answered, voice flat. "You destroyed your own reputation when you decided who was worthy of respect and who wasn't. You didn't know who I was that night, and that's the problem. You looked at me and decided I didn't belong. You decided my skin, my presence, my humanity wasn't good enough. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. And choices have consequences." Gasps. Some clapped. Others booed. Another worker stood, a housekeeper with tired eyes. "I've scrubbed these rooms for 5 years. My back aches, my hands are raw, and I've never once been thanked. Now you're telling me all that sacrifice means nothing. You fired us like trash." Vanessa leaned into the mic again. "No, I fired people who forgot what this business stands for. Excellence, respect. If you've worked hard, I respect that. But if you stood by while your co-workers disrespected guests, or worse, encouraged it, then you're part of the problem. I don't pay people to poison my brand. I pay them to protect it." Shouts, applause. The tension crackled like electricity. Reverend Daniels raised his hand for calm. "Let's not turn this into a shouting match. Miss Carter, people aren't just angry at what you did. They're angry at how you did it. Public humiliation. No warning. No conversation. That's the wound." Vanessa's gaze locked on him. "And what would you have me do? Smile and nod while my own people spit on me in my own house? Pretend it didn't happen because it makes for cleaner optics? No, I won't. Respect is not negotiable. Not in my hotel, not in my life." The crowd rumbled. Some shouted her name in support. Others yelled for her to step down. A young woman in the back shouted, "You think you're a queen, but you're just another boss stepping on the people who built your empire." Vanessa stood now, voice sharp as glass. "No, I am the one who built this empire, with no inheritance, with no safety net, with no one opening doors for me. I slept in my car. I ate noodles for months. I bled for every brick in this building. Don't you dare tell me I didn't build this." The room went quiet, her words ringing like a blade against steel. She scanned the crowd, her voice lowering. "You call me ruthless? Maybe I am. But if a man did what I did, you'd call him strong. If a white owner did it, you'd call him disciplined. So I do it, and suddenly it's tyranny." That line hit deep. Even those who hated her shifted uncomfortably. The truth had landed. Reverend Daniels leaned toward the mic. "So what now? Do you keep swinging the sword until there's nothing left but rubble?" Vanessa's eyes burned into his. "No, I build again. I'll hire new staff, better staff, who understand respect. And if the old guard wants to paint me as a villain, let them. I'd rather be a villain with integrity than a hero who bows to lies." The ballroom erupted again, half in cheers, half in boos. The city was split right down the middle. And in that storm, Vanessa Carter stood taller than ever. Tomorrow the headlines would either crown her or crucify her. But tonight she had faced them. And she hadn't broken. Her or crucify her. But tonight she had faced them. And she hadn't broken. The morning after the forum, the city was split in two. One headline read, "Vanessa Carter, ruthless or revolutionary?" Another screamed, "Hotel Queen humiliates workers again." Clips of her speech spread like wildfire. The moment she said, "I built this empire," became a viral meme. Some called it inspiring. Others mocked it. Her name was everywhere, her face on every screen. But the backlash sharpened. Her lawyer stormed into the office, phone in hand. 3 lawsuits filed already. Wrongful termination. Emotional distress. The receptionist is front and center, milking every interview. And now a labor union is threatening to step in. If they succeed, your entire hotel chain could be forced under union control. Vanessa didn't flinch. Let them file. Let them threaten. I'll fight them all. Vanessa, he snapped, this isn't just business anymore. This is personal. They're painting you as a tyrant who destroys her own community. If a jury buys that image, evidence won't matter. Before she could respond, her assistant burst in, breathless. The South Wing elevators were sabotaged. Someone poured acid into the wiring. Fire department says we're lucky no one was hurt. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. So they've moved from protests to crimes. It gets worse, her assistant said, voice trembling. We caught someone sneaking into the loading dock last night. Security cameras show it was one of the fired employees. He left a message on the wall. This is war. Her lawyer cursed under his breath. You need more protection. This isn't safe. Vanessa shook her head. No, if I start hiding, they win. I built this empire in the open. I'll defend it in the open. But even as she said it, a cold edge of fear slipped under her ribs. That evening she left the office late. The protests had thinned, the sidewalks quieter than usual. She walked to her car alone, heels echoing in the parking garage. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Quick. Heavy. Miss Carter, a voice hissed from the shadows. She spun, keys clenched between her fingers like a blade. A man stepped into the dim light. Not just any man. The receptionist, his face twisted with rage, his eyes wild. You ruined my life, he spat. My kids are crying. My wife left me this morning. You think you can just throw me away like garbage? You think you can stand up there and humiliate me again and again? Her pulse pounded, but she forced steel into her voice. You ruined yourself when you disrespected me in my own hotel. Don't blame me for your choices. He stepped closer. Too close. You don't deserve this empire. You don't deserve anything. People like you, his voice cracked, venom dripping. People like you were never supposed to have this kind of power. And there it was. The truth under all the excuses. The prejudice he hadn't said in the lobby that night, but had carried in his chest all along. Vanessa's fear turned to fire. She raised her chin, unflinching. That's why I'll never give it back. Because men like you think I shouldn't own it. And that's exactly why I do, he lunged. Before he could reach her, 2 security guards tackled him to the ground. His scream echoed through the garage as they dragged him away, his curses bouncing off concrete walls. Vanessa stood frozen for a moment, breathing hard. Then she straightened her coat, forcing calm back into her bones. Her lawyer's warning rang in her head. This isn't business anymore, this is personal. He was right. This was no longer about a hotel. This was about survival, hers and her legacies. The next morning, headlines exploded again. Vanessa Carter attacked by fired worker. The video footage, leaked from security, showed him lunging, her standing unshaken, her eyes like fire. Support surged online. Queen Vanessa trended for hours. But so did Dangerous Diva. Her empire stood at a crossroads. Every step forward would bring more enemies, more sabotage, more knives aimed at her back. And she knew the next move had to be bigger than firing staff, bigger than forums. The next move had to remind the city and her enemies that she wasn't just an owner. She was a force. The attack changed everything. For days, news networks replayed the security footage of the receptionist lunging at her. Clips froze on her expression, calm, steady, unshaken, while he thrashed and screamed as guards dragged him away. Commentators couldn't agree whether she looked fearless or cold, but either way the image burned into the city's memory. Her lawyer urged silence. Say nothing. Let the courts deal with him. Keep your head down. Vanessa shook her head. No, we don't hide. We weaponize. The very next morning she called a press conference, this time in the very lobby where it had all started. Reporters packed in, cameras aimed, waiting for fireworks. She stood on the same marble floor, her heels sharp against the tiles. "Last night I was attacked by a man I once employed. A man who thought he could intimidate me, break me, or shame me into silence. He failed. And let me say this clearly. Anyone who believes violence will scare me away from my empire will learn the same lesson. I do not bend. I do not break. And I will not be erased." Cheers erupted from her supporters. Even some who had criticized her before clapped now, swept up by her defiance. She wasn't finished. "This city has watched me be called ruthless, arrogant, too bold. And yet when I'm attacked, you all see the truth. I am strong. I am necessary. And if that strength offends you, find another place to stay, because my hotels will only grow stronger." The words hit hard. Cameras flashed. Headlines wrote themselves. But she wasn't done playing offense. That afternoon, she summoned her top executives. They sat around the glass table, still shaken from recent chaos. Vanessa dropped a folder in the center. "Expansion," she said. "Effective immediately. We're buying the Madison property on 8th Avenue. Owned." The room gasped. One executive stammered, "Vanessa, that's insane. Your brand is on fire. Investors are skittish. You want to buy another hotel in the middle of this storm?" She leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Exactly. While they think I'm weak. While competitors throw scraps at my fired staff. While protesters think I'm cornered. That's when we strike. We don't retreat. We expand." Her lawyer pinched the bridge of his nose. "You're gambling everything." Vanessa smirked. "That's why I always win. Because they play for survival. I play for dominance." The Madison deal wasn't just any expansion. That property had been the crown jewel of her loudest rival, the same competitor who had poached her fired employees and offered free stays to her cancelled guests. Buying it wasn't business. It was war. Within 48 hours, the news dropped. Carter Hotels acquires Madison property in aggressive expansion. The city exploded again. Some praised her audacity, calling her unstoppable. Others fumed, accusing her of empire building at the expense of justice. But one fact rang clear. Vanessa Carter wasn't retreating. She was conquering. Her rivals scrambled. The protesters grew louder. Unions announced a rally 3 times bigger than before. Lawsuits piled higher, but Vanessa stood taller. That night, she hosted a private dinner at the new Madison property. The chandeliers sparkled, the wine flowed, and the city's elite gathered to see if the queen still had her crown. Halfway through, an investor leaned in. "Vanessa, you've got guts. But guts won't save you forever. You've made enemies, dangerous ones." Vanessa swirled her glass of wine, calm as ice. "Good, enemies mean I matter. And when this city writes its story, they'll remember me not as someone who bowed under pressure, but as the woman who turned war into an empire." She raised her glass. "To dominance." The table echoed her toast. Outside in the streets below, the chants of protest still echoed louder than ever. But Vanessa Carter didn't hear defeat in them. She heard proof. Proof that her name was carved into the city's bones. And she wasn't finished carving. The city had never seen anything like it. On one side, a massive rally swelled across the plaza, thousands chanting for justice, waving signs, demanding boycotts. Unions, activists, even rival hotel chains had joined forces, painting Vanessa Carter as the face of greed and cruelty. On the other side, her supporters gathered just as loudly, holding banners that read, "Respect the Queen and power has a name." They shouted her words back at the crowd, "I built this empire," as if it were scripture. The air crackled with division. Police lined the streets, helicopters circled above. And at the center of it all, the courthouse doors opened. Vanessa stepped out. Black suit, head high, eyes like steel. The wrongful termination case had dragged for weeks, but today was Judgment Day. Reporters shoved microphones toward her. Cameras flashed. "Miss Carter, are you worried about the verdict?" one shouted. Vanessa didn't slow her stride. "Worried? No, whatever happens, this city knows one thing. Vanessa Carter does not bow." Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. The fired worker sat on one side, led by the receptionist, his face smug, convinced victory was his. Vanessa sat on the other, flanked by her lawyer, calm as a queen awaiting coronation. The judge read the decision. The court finds insufficient evidence of wrongful termination. Case dismissed. Gasps, shouts. The workers slumped in shock, their lawyer stammering objections that were struck down instantly. The receptionist's face twisted with rage, but the cameras caught it all, the moment his fight collapsed. Vanessa stood slowly, letting the silence stretch. Then she turned to the crowd, her voice carrying through the chamber. Respect is not optional. Not in my house. Not in my empire. Not ever. The supporters outside erupted in cheers as the news broke. Her enemies shouted louder, calling the ruling corrupt, calling her untouchable. But the truth was undeniable. Vanessa had won. Still, she knew victory came with a cost. The protests wouldn't vanish. The hatred wouldn't fade. She would forever be polarizing, half the city worshipping her, the other half wishing her downfall. That night she returned to the Madison property. The chandeliers glittered, the lobby pristine, the staff, newly hired, carefully vetted, standing straighter than soldiers as she walked past. No one dared meet her gaze with disrespect. In her office, she poured herself a glass of wine and looked out over the city. The skyline glowed, but she saw more than buildings. She saw the war she had fought carved into those lights. Every headline, every protest, every betrayal, it was all part of the empire now. Her lawyer entered quietly. "You've won the battle," he said, "but you'll never silence them completely. You'll always have enemies." Vanessa smiled faintly, swirling her glass. "Good. Enemies mean I matter. Let them scream. Let them fight. They'll spend their lives chasing me, and I'll still be standing." He studied her for a moment, then shook his head. "History won't know what to call you. Tyrant or trailblazer." Her eyes didn't leave the skyline. "History doesn't get to decide, I do." She raised her glass to the window, to the city that both loved and hated her. "To empire," she whispered. And in the streets below, the chants carried on, some cursing her name, some praising it. But all of them, every voice, every banner, every scream spoke of one truth. Vanessa Carter could never be ignored. Villain or legend, tyrant or queen, she had carved herself into history. And she would not be erased.